Hi guys, Asmo here, and today I have for you the Diablo 4 build that I am most likely going to start with. It's a Rogue Marksman build, which I think is also going to be one of the fastest, if not the fastest build in the entire game, at least for the early progression until the very end game. And there are multiple reasons for that, but I'm gonna basically go over the entire build, the skill selection, the aspect choices, the gems. We're gonna go through the entire skill tree and the Paragon board. I think the Marksman is going to be significantly faster than something like Twisting Blades or something like traps and bombs, even though traps and bombs later on with really good gear are possibly going to be like the fastest archetype, because you're just going to be like dashing and it's going to be automatically exploding things around you with some of the aspects and some of the things that you can do. It's really cool. And Twisting Blades seems like a playstyle that looks extremely flashy and looks really fast, but it's not actually fast in practice. Even though your character is looking like it's moving faster, your clear speed is not as fast as with the Marksman build, like not even close. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the next video, where I'm going to explain how actually people are getting baited into certain things with the builds. But first I'm going to just show this build, just so you have like a nice build to start with. I definitely recommend this for anybody, like no matter what difficulty you're playing. Like this is just gonna get you through the game way faster, way easier, and it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So we're using puncture, we're using a penetrating shot, and we're using a rapid fire. We're not using a ultimate ability, and there's a reason for that, but let's go to the skill tree first and go through that. So first of all, we're using puncture. The main purpose of puncture is to buff our core skills, to generate some energy, and also to apply vulnerable, which is very powerful debuff. Applying vulnerable, like going into the like toward the enemies, so that you can hit them with at least 2 blades, and applying a vulnerable is extremely strong. And you definitely want to do this for a single target. For clear, you don't need to do this, so you don't need to like jump into packs. You can shoot the packs from a distance with penetrating shot, but if you kill the pack and there's like a big elite that's very tanky, or if you're fighting a boss, then shooting a puncture is going to be great. You can do it very quickly, 3 times, because we are using one of the aspects, which is what is it, basic skills gain up to 30% attack speed. So this is the rapid aspect. The codex is going to give you, the codex version is giving you the minimum roll, so it's 15%, but it's a guaranteed thing that you can find. Every single aspect, by the way, is from the codex except for one of them, which is the Umbrous aspect, which you can gamble pants for it, but I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But so puncture is the first skill. Also, while you're leveling, you're not even going to respec, because this is the first thing that you want to pick. No matter what build, by the way, you're leveling, like just start with puncture. Level 4 fundamental puncture, you're going to kill the first boss faster than with any other skill. So that's what we're starting with. And then we are putting a couple of points in penetrating shot and also in rapid fire. So we're going to be using both of them, because penetrating shot has the best clear out of any skill that we have, and rapid fire has the best single target out of any skill that we have. So this combo is very powerful. A lot of people are picking lots of like different utility options. They're picking smoke grenades, the ultimate abilities, like different things that they very rarely will use, or like shadow step, which if you're not melee is actually not useful at all, and it's just making you have skills that you're not going to be using often enough. Instead of that, it's much better to invest into skills that you will actually use, and they will be actually like extremely useful for you. So we're picking the penetrating shot, and we're picking the improved penetrating shot, which will give you higher chance to crit, which is important. And then also we can either pick advanced rapid fire, or we can pick the improved rapid fire. Both of these are really good. This is going to depend a little bit on the energy that you're spending and how much energy you have coming from other sources. If you need more energy, you go with this, and if you need more damage, you go with this. This is a very simple swap that you can do at any point. And then also we're picking stutter step. So stutter step and modifiers like that are some of the reasons why this is I think the fastest build in the game, pretty much, right? We've got the stutter step, which gives us movement speed. We've got dash, which is an insane mobility cooldown. We've got more movement speed coming from things like the shrouds, right? So we've got the dark shroud, which gives us more movement speed. We've got tons of movement speed coming from everywhere. We've got tons of mobility, and we have the superior ranged playstyle playstyle, just a ranged playstyle with giant AoE. If you didn't know, there is an aspect for penetrating shot which is guaranteed to get when you complete the Bastion of Faith. When you complete that, you get the trick shot aspect, which allows the penetrating shot to basically split. It's like forking into like at 90-degree angles, and it shoots like at enemies to the sides, right? So you get a great coverage with this, and this means that you're not even required to use something like a Shadow Imbuement. Shadow Imbuement is really cool if you're gonna have large packs, and there's actually a very easy option for us to spec into that, right? We could potentially spec into Shadow Imbuement and use it as well. However, most of the time I think it's gonna be much better to use the Poison Imbuement, at least after you get the trick shot aspect. Before you get it, you probably want to run like at least a couple points into the Shadow Imbuement just so you have better clear, and that's gonna give you like extra clear speed. However, later on I don't think that's gonna be necessary, and we're just gonna simply rely on Poison all the time. So we're gonna be using dash with enhanced dash. That's just for some extra damage. That's basically because I have a spare point. This is absolutely not necessary. It's very conditional damage, and you'll notice that a lot of people's, like a lot of builds from a lot of content creators have so many conditional things that you cannot possibly keep up. So you're gonna have like grenades that you drop, and then you dash through the enemy, and then you shadow step back to them, and then you hit them from behind while running. Like, it's just, you need to have so many things that by the time you finish setting up the combo, the effects from the first things that you're gonna use to debuff the enemies are gonna already expire, and it's actually not gonna work. So there are too many conditional things that people are using. So I try to always avoid conditional things unless this is like a massive benefit, right? Like, for example, if you have damage versus elites, that's okay, because you're always gonna be able to basically clear the regular monsters much easier than the elites. So you have some extra damage against elites when it's like double the amount of damage versus normal enemies. It's totally fine to pick that. But if it's like too conditional, like damage to close or far enemies, like while using this weapon or that weapon, it's a little bit too conditional, at least early on, right? Like this node, Weapon Mastery, I think it's gonna be a very good node, but not while leveling, because you're gonna be swapping between crossbows and bows, depending on which weapon you find that has the strongest damage, especially while leveling. You're gonna be swapping those, and then increased damage to vulnerable enemies is gonna be great for bosses, for single target, but not for clear. And then crossbows increase critical strike damage. Again, it's going to depend on how much crit you have at any given time, right? So definitely I want to invest into crit early on, so I will be looking for crit on rings and on weapons and stuff like that. Like, I want to get as much crit as possible early on, because it's going to make the stutter step more consistent. And also on the weapons, we're running Wind Striker aspect, which gives basically the same effect. Whenever we critically strike, we get extra movement speed. There is a limit to movement speed. However, buffs and like temporary effects bypass that limit, so you don't have to worry about that. The movement speed limit, that's I think like 125% or something like that, only applies to things that are permanent stats, like stats on your boots and things like that. But the buffs from different abilities that you have and from different aspects, these things can bypass the movement speed limit, so you don't have to worry about that. You can just run as fast as humanly possible, which Rogue is really good at. Then we've got Concealment. One level before taking Concealment, we could take Shadow Step, but I think it's just complicating things, because you want a source of Unstoppable. You want a way to get out of CC, because CC is how you're gonna die. I think most of the time, if you're gonna die as a rogue, it's gonna be when you get CC'd, because you rely on your mobility a lot for your survivability. We run very quickly, we shoot from a distance, right? So it's a pretty safe play style, and the main thing that's gonna kill you is going to be when you get stunned or you get frozen or CC'd in any other way, and you basically just get killed. So we have a couple of ways to deal with this. Number one is going to be the Concealment. If you find that you don't need it, right, if you find that you're like never in danger, you can replace the Concealment, for example, for Shadow Imbuement, right? You can put a couple more points into Dark Shroud, you can put a couple more points into Weapon Mastery, and you can basically, instead of this, use the Poison Imbuement and Shadow Imbuement, right? right? So that's an option, because we have also another safety net here in the helmet, which is becoming injured while crowd controlled. So becoming injured is, I think, going below like 35 or 25% HP, something like that. So when you become injured while crowd controlled, you get the unstoppable buff, and basically that means you get like a safety net. But if it happens a couple of times, then you're gonna need to also use your skill. So judge that for yourself based on like how often you get CC'd and how much do you need the skill. This also gives you some extra movement speed, so you can technically just use it for extra mobility, for extra energy if you wanna just get some extra burst damage out, and then you get a guaranteed critical strike or guaranteed vulnerable, both of which are pretty good, but this is a very long cooldown, so keep that in mind. This is not something you can use very often, like once in a boss fight pretty much. Then we've got also exploit. This is damage to healthy and injured enemies. The damage to healthy enemies is really good for clear, and the damage to injured enemies is very much just going to be used for bosses, going to help you clear things, going to help you leave fewer stragglers. For example, like your poisons are going to be able to finish the stragglers more often, and so on. Then we also got 9% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, again more single target damage, and then we've got the Dark Shroud with the movement speed. So the movement speed is really powerful for this build because of us playing from ranged, and we can either cast the Dark Shroud ourselves, or we can use also the Ambrose aspect. So the Ambrose aspect gives you, on a lucky hit, a critical strike with marksman skills, so very like conditional, right? But I'm gonna show you that it's actually pretty easy to get, very conditional, but it gives you a chance to grant a free dark shroud shadow, right? So you get basically one of the dark shrouds automatically procced, so you don't need to cast the ability yourself. The reason why this is actually something viable is that one of the skills that we're gonna be using all the time, right? While clearing, we're gonna be using penetrating shot, and penetrating shot has a very high lucky hit. This is 50% lucky hit, so lucky hit is going to be half of the time, and then crits are going to be pretty often because we are investing a bunch into int, we are investing into crit chance. This is a crit build and we are scaling crit. That's the main way we're scaling our damage, so we are going to be critting. And this is a marksman skill as well, right? So this applies to all of it, like lucky hit, very high chance, crit strikes, very high chance, marksman skills, check. So now we just get basically a chance to get free Dark Shroud when we're just clearing monsters, and we're gonna be proccing this all the time. So we're gonna have a pretty good uptime on the Shrouds. They're gonna reduce the damage we take, and also they're gonna give us more movement speed. And I value the movement speed actually more than the critical strike chance. You could get for the critical strike chance, but this is only active if you have at least 4 active shadows. But this is active if you just have 1, right? If you just have 1, you get 4% movement speed. If you have 2, you get 8, and so on. So more of them is going to be better, of course, but even if you just have 1, this is already active. So this is an amazing combo that's just going to make you tankier, and it's just going to give you extra speed without you having to micromanage anything, press any buttons, and so on. That's also another thing I went for with this build. So much like ease of use without having to press a billion buttons, do like crazy combos and things like that. You have like very simple, very straightforward abilities, right? We have the puncture, which is our generator, which we basically use to apply vulnerable and use our combo points. Puncture is also the fastest out of the basic skills, so it's gonna be the fastest to stack our combo points. So it's just gonna be bam 3 quick hits, and then we rapid fire, bam 3 quick hits, and then we rapid fire, right? And that's gonna be our single target. Also using the poison imbuement, which this is not gonna consume, but the rapid fire is gonna consume, right? So we're using the poison, and then for mobility we got dash, which is like one of the best movement abilities in the game, and then we got, for defense, we got the concealment, right? We're playing in softcore, by the way, at least I'm playing in softcore. I don't care about hardcore, I don't care about the hardcore race. I'm not racing to 100 as well, but I do want a build that's gonna be the fastest at just killing monsters and farming gear for myself, so that I can get tons of gear, tons of cash, just progress really quickly and easily, right? So that's why I am optimizing this build as if I'm racing, but I'm not actually gonna be racing. I'm gonna be enjoying the story, but when I'm actually killing the monsters, I want to be as fast as possible, right? Because I want to just very quickly go through the dungeons, like faster than any other build. I think this build will be able to go. Then we've got what else do we have here? We got the exploit, we already talked about that. We got precision imbuement, basically gives you increased critical strike chance when you use your imbuement, so that's just extra damage. Poison is basically just extra damage that you put on demand while you're clearing. This is going to apply to all of these penetrating penetrating shots and like the splitting arrows to the sides as well. It's going to apply poison. This is increasing the poison duration, and this is enabling us to scale crit as well. So because we're going to be critting so often, this is giving us 75% increased damage with poisons when we crit. Compared to this, you basically have to do the math based on how much crit chance you have, but assuming that we're scaling crit like we're supposed to, this is going to be the better choice. This basically means 30% more poison damage, right? So this is 75% increased, depending on how this works as a like in terms of like multiplier or increased damage that is additive. I think when you get like high enough crit chance, this becomes better. But at the beginning, if you have like very very low crit chance, or if you're not playing crit build, this would be a better option. And then we've got also Deadly Venom, which is 9% increased poison damage, and Debilitating Toxins, which is insane for defense. Poisoned enemies deal 15% less damage. This is like probably the strongest defensive node on this tree that I have here. Like 15% less damage taken from enemies is absolutely insane. You're gonna apply this to every boss. You're gonna apply this to every big pack that you use your poison imbuement on. It's very, very powerful. Next, we're not picking any abilities that are ultimate abilities. If Shadow Clone is going to be working very well, and Shadow Clone is going to be, for example, buffed in terms of the AI of the clone, and it's going to actually like hit the enemy and do things as well as you, then Shadow Clone would be the option here. But Rain of Arrows is basically completely useless. It's absolutely useless, redundant skill. You just might as well just shoot your penetrating shot. It makes no sense to use Rain of Arrows. And then Death Trap also, we're not scaling shadow damage, we're not doing anything like that, so just extra button for no reason. Just way better to use our rapid fire for single target and so on. So we're just using the innervation for extra energy generation. You can also decide if you need that or not based on how much energy you're generating, because there's lots of variables like this thing, like how much lucky hit, like which abilities you're using more often, based on your Paragon board and so on. So you decide for yourself if you need that. And then we've got increased energy generation while moving, as well as haste. So this again gives me even more movement speed. While we are at 50% or at maximum energy, we get 15% movement speed, and this is basically going to be active all the time when we're moving, right? If we're moving between packs, we're going to be at above 50% maximum energy, and we're going to be moving quicker and quicker. So this is really, really amazing. And then below 50% maximum energy, we get the increased attack speed, so we can puncture quicker and regenerate our energy quicker and so on. So this is very, very powerful. And then we've got the precision, which basically just, you can look at this as just gives you extra damage. The one thing you have to be careful, when you have the proc active, your puncture can eat the proc, right? So the puncture can consume it for the guaranteed crit strike. So when you have the proc active, you actually want to use your penetrating shot or your rapid fire, right? So that's how you want to utilize this. So now let's look a little bit at the gear and skills, and last we're going to look at the Paragon board. So for the aspects here, on the helmet we've got the becoming injured while crowd controlled grants unstoppable. Again, all of these are available to unlock by either completing a dungeon or progressing the campaign, except for the pants. So pants is going to be the one that I am gambling for. I'm going to be spending my obols on the pants or on the boots, because it's at least until I get like some decent boots with movement speed, because that is very, very important early on. But once I have like decent boots, I'm going to be spending it on the pants so that I can get the Ambrose aspect. Then we've got the aspect of the might. This is basically damage reduction, 20% damage reduction if you're using a basic skill. And we're going to be using basic skills because we are speccing into combo points. Then we have on the gloves, imbuements have increased effect against vulnerable enemies. We're going to be putting vulnerable on the enemies with the puncture, and then we're going to be using the poison. So basically this just means your poisons are going to be stronger while you're doing single target. This is essentially more single target damage. Then we've got the Ambrose aspect, and then on the boots we got Wind Striker aspect. This is something you want to get pretty early. You want to prioritize getting these. So if you're going to be playing a Marksman Rogue build, check out where these aspects come from and prioritize these dungeons. You can, I don't know, look at an interactive Diablo 4 map and mark these on your map so that you can know which dungeons you should prioritize to get all of your aspects. And then when you have a good piece of gear that's gonna last you a few levels, then you can put that on and enjoy the build being stronger. Trickshot aspect, super powerful, just insane clear, especially if you combine it with the Imbuements, very, very powerful codex. And then we've got the Vengeful aspect, which on a lucky hit, making an enemy vulnerable, has up to 30 to 50% chance to grant 3% increased critical strike chance for 3 seconds, up to 9%. This is very, very complicated. Basically, you get more crit chance, right? You get more crit when you are making enemies vulnerable, and we're making enemies vulnerable through the puncture, but also we're making enemies vulnerable through any other skill we use through our Paragon board, which I'm gonna show in a moment. So this is basically giving me more crit chance, which is always very, very welcome. Then we've also have aspect of the expectant. This is pretty much like everybody uses this. Attacking enemies with basic skill increases the damage of the next core skill by 5 to 10%, up to 30%. So this works perfectly with the combo skills because it stacks basically up to 3 times when you have the max roll. So that's gonna be using your 3 punctures and then using your rapid fire, and that's gonna have up to 30% increased damage, which is really, really nice. And then we have skills dealing more damage or increased damage based on the available primal resource. So the more energy you have, if you're at max energy, you're gonna be doing some extra damage. So that's just basically extra damage, like increases to you. And then on the weapons, we've got the rapid aspect, which gives me attack speed for my basic skills, which is really, really nice. Puncture is already very, very quick, so that's gonna just make it feel very, very smooth and very easy to just puncture the enemies to apply vulnerable or to generate combo points. You're gonna very, very quickly generate these combo points. And then we've got aspect of the arrow storms, which is really nice. We have a very high chance for lucky hit in our skills, so we have about 10% chance. So if I got 50% chance, then we've got per hit, 5% chance per hit to create an arrow storm. So that is a pretty good amount of arrow storms that are gonna be going off, increasing your clear, and you can have up to 5 active arrow storms. So this is a really, really nice ability as well. That's gonna improve your clear. I talked about all of these. For the gems, I would definitely prioritize critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. That's gonna increase your single target damage. That's what you put in your weapons. And then in the armor, I would use the maximum life because we're not gonna basically need anything else from this. There's not that much else that we benefit from, so I would just go simply for life. And then for jewelry, I would go for armor because we're not gonna have a lot of strength. Strength gives us armor, and we're not gonna stack that much of it, and we're gonna have a lot of int, which is gonna give us all resists. So on gear, for example, we're gonna be prioritizing int and dex, but we cannot prioritize every stat, so we're gonna have less strength, therefore our armor is gonna suffer a little bit. So I would get some extra armor if you can that way. So that's basically this. And then let's look at the Paragon boards and talk about what do we prioritize. So I have like a 5 board Paragon board here that is prioritizing, basically like facilitating this build. First, we're picking the Ranger, which is not a surprise. This glyph is very, very powerful. For every dexterity, you get up to 9.6 increased damage for your marksman skills. We are using marksman skills exclusively to deal damage, and then also while wielding a ranged weapon. So like if you're using the ranged abilities, you take 10% reduced damage. And there's tons of dexterity in this first starter board. That's why this is a good one to put here, and it's a very, very simple one and just like a no-brainer to go for. For the rare ones, we're going through the right side. This is basically prioritizing damage the way I'm doing this. Of course, this build is going to be linked in the description, so you can just look at all of these individual nodes. You can adjust it if you need some other stats. This is something that's going to be a little bit more flexible, so don't take this as a gospel, because it's going to depend on which boards you find, which glyphs you find, and so on, how quickly or slowly we level them. So that's a little bit more complicated. You're gonna be able to, you're gonna have to be a little bit more flexible with this. So this pathing is not gonna be exactly like that, because sometimes you're gonna need more of certain attributes. Like if you're gonna need more strength, you're gonna path through this and so on, right? But then we're going for the board that is exploit weakness. So exploit weakness, whenever you deal damage to a vulnerable enemy, and every single time we're gonna be hitting a boss, we're gonna make them vulnerable, they take 1% increased damage from you. So this is another multiplier. The boss taking increased damage, that basically count, like after our increases, this is gonna be counted if it works anyway, like similar to Path of Exile, right? The increased damage on the enemy is basically a more multiplier. So this is really, really good because we're going to be using this on single target. On the way, we've got also damage to elites and movement speed after killing elites. Any like movement speed I very much welcome, and damage to elites is great because those are going to be the tankiest targets, so that's who you actually need the damage for. You don't need that much damage against the little like weak mobs, but you need some extra damage against elites. And then here we're picking the combat glyph. So combat is absolutely insane. For every 5 int in this range, core skills, so that would be the rapid fire and penetrating shot, we deal 19.2 increased critical strike damage, which is insane. We're gonna be critting a lot. Also, when we crit, the skills are gonna restore some of the energy, so that's another one of those things that's gonna vary your energy cost a little bit. That's why all of these passives that give you energy, you have to adjust a little bit to how much you have coming from the glyphs, coming from the passives, coming from the gear, and so on. And then we're picking here some extra dexterity and vulnerable damage. So this is very, very nice because this board has one of the higher amounts of intelligence. So you can see here on this board, there's 49 int in the radius of the glyph. So this is the board that's basically has the highest int, and this is like one of the highest increases to our damage that we can possibly get. That's why on this board we're choosing to use this glyph. And also it has strength and int bonuses here, so you want to take the ones that are not dex related early on, so that you can use them while they require less of the attribute, right? Because your stats like your strength, int, and dex, these rare nodes, the later on you spec into them, like further boards that are connected further away from your starting point, these require more and more attributes. Next board we are connecting to is a board with no witness. So the reason for that is because it has a lot of strength, so that we can pack in here also a lot of intelligence, because it's very hard to find boards with a lot of intelligence. So we are skipping this because we are not using an ultimate skill, but we have really good bonuses here. So we have tons of intelligence, life, dexterity. This is all giving us the attributes that we need because we are prioritizing dexterity and intelligence. And then for every 5 int, we deal increased damage to poisoned enemies. So this is again another multiplier. It also increases the duration of the poison, so we don't have to worry about the uptime of that. The poison already is going to be lasting a really long time. So it's just another multiplier that we're getting, another way to increase damage taken by the enemies, and it's a pretty large number, and this is one of the boards with the largest amount of int that we can use. Then we're pathing down here and we've got a cunning stratagem. So this is non-damage combo points. Bonuses are increased by 33% when you spend 3 combo points. So these bonuses, for example, are something like, for example, rapid fire. It adds extra arrow that being shot, right? So you can get certain things to breakpoints. I don't know if there are going to be more of those effects in game, but this is pretty useful. It's just going to give you better clear. It's just going to give you better bonuses for already doing the playstyle that spends combo points. So this is really, really nice. And then we're picking on the way armor and potion healing. Potion healing, by the way, is going to be the main healing that we're going to be using. You're going to be relying on potions quite a lot with this build. And then we're pathing to the glyph, and this one has how much strength in the radius? It has 49 strength, so this is one of the higher strength, if not the highest strength nodes as well. That's why we're putting the strength glyph in here. And this one, for every 5 strength, you get 7.2 increased damage to vulnerable targets, and also whenever an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable. So this is basically automatic vulnerable every 20 seconds. So you're gonna be every now and then applying vulnerable with whatever ability you're using without having to use puncture. So this is gonna help you a little bit. Like if you're running to the boss room, you're gonna probably have this up, and then the first hit you're gonna do on the boss, you don't have to puncture at first, so you can already start shooting from a distance and make them vulnerable right away and start doing maximum damage very, very early. So this is very, very powerful glyph that I would definitely recommend. And here we have armor dex and core skill damage. Anytime you can find core skill damage, this is very valuable as well, because we mostly are going to be doing our damage from the core skills, so either the penetrating shot or the rapid fire. And then we're pathing down, we got another board which is tricks of the trade. So this one, marksman skills grant next cutthroat increased damage, and cutthroat skills grant next marksman skill increased damage. This is going to apply to mainly the dash synergy, right? So we're going to be using dash all the time. Whenever just we're traveling between packs, you're going to be using a dash, hitting a pack, and that penetrating shot is going to have increased damage. You're going to dash again to the next pack and penetrating shot again, and that's going to give you increased damage as well. So that's this synergy. Basically, that's what it does. And then for the glyph, we are using chip. So chip, another source of increased damage taken by enemies. So anytime you deal physical damage, which is all of your base damage basically, unless you have a weapon that somehow deals different type of damage, but by default your marksman skills like your puncture and rapid fire and so on deal physical damage, and then on top of that you also have the poison, and this increase whenever you deal physical damage, you increase the damage an enemy takes from you, applies to your poison damage as well. So it does not only apply to your physical damage, not only multiplies that, but also multiplies your poison damage. So that's a very, very powerful bonus as well. The first bonus, not the additional bonus, but the first one, the regular bonus, does apply only to the physical damage though. And then we also have things like damage to elites here. What else we have? Damage to elites and just regular attributes. So that's basically, and critical strike damage as well. So that's basically the Paragon boards. They're pretty straightforward. There is no like crazy take in here, and we are able to achieve similar stats, similar attributes to a lot of the other builds that I've seen, but the damage is going to be significantly higher than other builds that are using the same thing, because we're using the poison, right? We're focusing very heavily on poison. The rapid fire with poison is a very, very strong combo for single target, especially with this playstyle with like combo points and with making the enemy vulnerable and all of the stuff that we have. So this is basically the full explanation of the build. If you have any questions, you can let me know in the comments below. I think this is going to be a really, really good starter rogue build. It's going to carry you to the end game. I don't know how far in the end game we're going to have to start redesigning it to see like how we are tackling the challenges. But the way I look at it is that in most games, usually you want to use the Occam's razor, right? You want to use the most direct approach because that's going to be usually the most effective approach. Like in a lot of different builds, try to be like to do this sneaky thing, like throw this here, jump there, use this ability, slow enemies and then daze them, and then, but like all of those things are not going to be up all the time, right? Instead, just shoot them and kill them, right? Shoot them and kill them and run faster. That's going to be your best approach, I think, at least at the beginning, until we get to very, very difficult content. Then when we get to very, very difficult content, maybe it's going to be impossible and we're going to have to become much more tanky and we're going to have to take like a very, very slow, grindy approach to kill monsters. But if we cannot overpower them with damage, then we're going to start to rethink that. But I don't think that's going to come anytime soon, like at least until like end of like the last difficulty. So you're gonna be very fine leveling with this, and you're gonna be way faster than with pretty much any other build. I can't really think of any other build that would be anywhere near this quick at clearing, but I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more in the next video. So thank you so much for watching. The link to the build is in the description. See you next time. Bye bye.